you to join us as well. And it is being recorded as well. So we've got ourselves covered. Yeah, so thanks for joining us today, those jumping in and those watching on Facebook Live in the group. Welcome, and those watching the recording at another point, feel free to comment in the posts of the Successful Bookkeeper live stream. And tag us in there, and we will monitor that anyway and come back and make comments and answers as we go through. Love to hear other people's feedback and comments about this particular topic. So the topic is how to stay afloat during BAS. So this doesn't necessarily need to be something that Deb and I instruct you on or do educational pieces around this. I mean, we certainly have got, what happened in our business in those crazy busy times and how we survived, and that we weren't perfect, and that how we tweaked it pretty much every quarter, certainly every year. And that's part of the process, is just continually improving. But I'd very much love to have some of those that are on the call today to come off mute and talk to us about what they're experiencing, so that we can give you some live, answers or assistance to what you're experiencing at the moment. And others on the call to also give their recommendations on what they're doing at the moment that will help others. So we're all going through a very similar thing, and we have been through a similar thing. We're all at different stages of our business. So it is very useful to hear other people, ideas and suggestions. So we will ask people on the call today to come off mute and have a chat, and also pop it into the chat. So, and Michelle, you're smiling already. Thank you. Awesome. All right. So I guess firstly, how do you stay afloat during BAS? And the big one that we would probably start with is making sure that you do have processes and procedures and systems in place. I remember when I first started, I would do a BAS and I would write out the checklist pretty much every time I did a BAS. I knew that you'd go through things by route, but you'd go, okay, well, let's document this. So next time we do it and we don't forget a step, or that we can get some assistance in. So I'd write it out again at some child activity. I'd be in the car writing it out again. Lose that bit of paper, or where I save that in Evernote or somewhere in some filing system, come to the next BAS. It's that I know I had recorded it. I don't want to miss anything. I am so busy. I want to do the same process for every client. Let's go again. At another sports activity, I'd be writing it out again. And it was just continue on until I found Pure Bookkeeping, which had all of the systems, and then great. It's all documented, BAS, all the checklists, and so much more. It was just an easy thing for me to flow into and just take advantage of all of those checklists and I, it gave me an area to put them into as well. File them like this, put them in here, do this. So that's what we are wanting to encourage you to be able to stay afloat during BAS, to be able to start documenting your own processes and procedures, filing them into a location that you will always find them, and do the same activities the same way every time. So Deb, I know this is probably, one of the big reasons why you created Pure Bookkeeping in the start is around getting everything out of your head and how important that is.
Absolutely. And, many of you would have heard me use the phrase, or whatever, the BAS on and BAS off. I've often spoken about in my experience when I was growing my business, and it was BAS on. And it was actually my husband, Neil, that coined that little phrase, because the family noticed when it was BAS on that I wasn't home for dinner, and Neil was getting everyone into bed and getting homework done and doing things like that with the kids. And then I'd appear and they go, oh, it must be BAS off. And so that became a saying in our household. This is before I got it all together, and had staff and was in that next level. But the pain of BAS on is real. There's not many people showing your videos. Come on, don't be shy. Show your faces. There you are, Parisa. Good to see you. Alison, I know it's
I had to get off video because my battery was dying and I had to move. I didn't want to have a tour of my house.
Okay, thank you. And Sarah, Maurice, I don't know if that's Lewis or Louis. Show your videos. Let's have a chat. Who is experiencing BAS on pain in their business? You can put up your hand. You can raise your hand in your, wherever you do that in the thing. I think there's a raise your hand, I think. Are we? Yes, yep. Maurice. What I would actually like to hear. So Katrina and I know this pain. We haven't had to go through it for quite some time, but it's like childbirth. You never quite forget the pain that you were going through. It's a little bit dull, but you don't forget the pain. So we feel for you. And what we want to do here is help you. So if you are going through a BAS on, and it's just this, the BAS off for me, when it was BAS off, it was, I was able to get some routine back with the family, but also it was like, I actually used to call it mopping up, because there were things that I would just go, oh, can't deal with that now. Can't deal with that now. Can't deal with, that's not urgent. I've got to get the urgent stuff done. The deadline. And then I'd go, okay, what did I put off doing? And so I put that back on my plate and bring this back on my plate. And although the deadline was over and you breathed a sigh of relief and all of that, you knew that the next BAS was not that far away. And it is an absolute roller coaster and extremely painful. So if you want to get help with the BAS on, BAS off roller coaster, then you need to unmute yourself and tell us what your problem is, and let, not just, as Katrina said, not just us help you, it's the rest of the community. There's a lot of experienced people on the call now that have got large businesses and things like that. So Alison, I think I saw you nod your head. I'm going to put you in the hot seat.
And Parisa is also off mute. So let's go with Alison first.
Alison, I don't go on.
I don't think I'm unique at all. I would have to say that my pain is shared here with getting documentation from clients.
Oh, yes. Yes.
That's the point I'm at. The good ones, they're great. I've done them, and now I'm just constantly, I feel like I'm begging. And in actual fact, it kind of leads to a quick question. I was looking at the carbon webinar that was done a while back. Jumped into Carbon yesterday and saw the being able to ask the client questions and getting them to upload things and do all of that. I'm really, really keen to know if anyone else is using Carbon. It might be a topic for another day, but that's where I'm at, and I can really see the potential of that being able to help that issue.
Yes, I know. I in our community, in the pure bookkeeping community, we have, I think, something like 50 licensees that are using Carbon, which is a significant percentage of the total overall.
Over 10%.
Pardon?
Over 10%.
Yes. And so we may not go into the detail of how Carbon can help in this call, but the weekly support call on Friday is a great place to dive into that some more. And there may be some people on that call who can help. It is the most popular workflow management program. And you can't, I guess in a way, it's not that your question is unrelated. It is having a workflow management program that will give you confidence that you're tracking the progress of each of everything that you're doing is really important. So it is, you know, if anyone's not got a workflow management and you're keeping it all in your head, that is not sustainable, and that will drive you nuts. That will wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning over and over again, because you go, oh, I haven't done that, or
Yeah.
something.
I use
so-
Asana. I'd
Oh,
live
right.
out of Asana at the moment.
Okay.
Like I may as well just give up without it.
Yes.
But it's that being able, it's that getting the detail from the clients and being able to remind and you know, without feeling like you're constantly begging them.
yeah.
Have you, sorry,
No, go.
Debbie, sorry. I just did a webinar the other day with Dext. They have a communication feature within their area in relation to getting receipts and asking questions and stuff. Have you looked at that? Because if you're already
Tried.
paying for a Dext subscription, you might be able to find you can get that communication functionality in there instead of having to buy a whole nother system.
Yeah. Do you use Dext at the moment, Alison?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the ones that I have pushed back don't even read it.
Yeah. I
Maybe
think
it's the
you'll
clients.
find that it's not your communication function, it's the client. So if the client doesn't appreciate the importance of getting back to you on information, then they're not going to, no matter what system you've got in terms of communication. So we often find the best thing to do is to make them realize the difference. So putting their things through without GST when they could be claiming GST, and then advising them that, you know, if they provided these 10 receipts, they could have had an extra $1,000 refund, stuff like that, so that they can see the importance. But I don't think the communication is communication. So how you communicate doesn't matter, but then it comes back to your client and them valuing your service and the importance of getting back to you. You've got things that, like in the letter of engagement, I'm pretty sure you'll have we've got a 24-hour turnaround on email replies, and that there's that expectation that they will be similarly engaged with your services. So I think it's about educating the client, not necessarily what communication platform you use.
Just to touch on that, Michelle.
Sorry.
So I was going to say, I've built into my engagement letter that anything sitting the client to advise file they don't get back to me will be coded to owner's drawings at the end of the financial year. And when the monthly reports actually really worked, those guys, Alison, that I'm a very similar group that are like that, seeing that pot grow. So I send them not just the month, but the year to date. They see the value at the bottom. They know that's going straight out in the financial year. Sorry, done and dusted. They're starting to get back to me. It's educating them through the pain point of the dollar value at the end of that report. So I love it. That might be something to,
yeah, that's what I used to do too. You'd give them one email for follow-up for questions. You might follow up in a week or a little bit more to get the answers. And then the next one is to say, we won't be able to claim your GST, and we won't be able to use it as a deduction until you give us clarification. And it just sits there in the client to action account. And that does push them, doesn't it, Catherine, to claim
really
their
does.
GST BAS and to get it as a tax deduction.
Yeah.
Then they're
And
all over.
I've also used Text Expander to template it. So it takes me 3 seconds to then send out those emails. So I'm not even wasting time myself processing, typing out the emails. I have some built-in options. I just tick the boxes for what I want to be included in that email, drop in the attachment, and it takes a minute to send them that follow-up.
What email program are you using?
Text Expander, is that what it's called? It's one of the recommended
Through
apps.
Outlook or Gmail?
No, it's an
not-
add-on, so you
it's
download
not-
it.
It's not, Alison, this is something that was introduced to pupil keeping licensees in one of our weekly support calls. Robin Flynn actually came across Text Expander. What it does, there's about a 6-digit, what they call a snippet. So it's a series of letters that is a code, and you create the code, and whatever it is that you're going to create, it goes over absolutely any, to the best of my knowledge, any program that it can be a Word document, it can be Excel, it can be anything that you're using. that you repeat the same thing over and over and over. We're using it in the Pure Bookkeeping system for the naming protocols of all the reports we get you to save, so that you don't have to sit there and type, because some of them are a bit long. So you and Jeremy Cairns, one of our licensees, created the code for the Pure Bookkeeping system naming protocols of all our reports. But that is one purpose of it. But there are a lot of other functions. And as Catherine said, you program it in, and it's fairly simple, Catherine, to create the code and do all that. Yep.
Yeah, it's so simple. There's optional. You can just even like hi, and then the name populates. So it pops up a little box. You type in the little variables and hit go, and bang, your email's done straight into Outlook. It's takes maybe 20 minutes to set up. Draft one email, and that's there templated to go. It's really, really good. Definitely check it out.
So that's Text Expander. Lou, perhaps you could, if you don't mind, just look that website up and just pop that link, because this is for everyone. Like this, we use it in our community, Pure Bookkeeping, for, as I say, for a purpose, but it's actually can be used for any purpose where you duplicate something in words, whether it be an email or something else that you're creating. Yes, so that's a good way to do that. And I agree that the other thing that, because some clients won't listen, so then maybe comes a point in time where you think, can I be bothered? Really? Seriously? It is, and you've heard me say before, don't care more about your client's business than they do. You might have heard, if you haven't heard me say that, then write it down and put that up on your wall, or as a screensaver or something. Don't care more about your client's business than they do. So if they are going to lose $1,000 and they're not going to get this, and it's going to go to drawings and all of that, you get your Text Expander thing and you let them know by email. I actually made a series of emails that escalated the consequences of the behavior. So if they, we had them set to deliver us the work on this date or this week and what have you. It didn't come that week, was meant to, and then I'd send an email saying, we are preparing your BAS this week. If we don't, I'll extend that out to next week. If we don't receive it by this date, I can't guarantee that I will be able to lodge your BAS on time. So it even got to that point where there were some clients that I said, now that deadline has passed, so this is the third email, now that this, just notify you, this is the third email I've sent to say that I may not, because you're delaying sending me the information, I may be late. I may not be able to lodge your BAS on time. Now the final one is, due to the fact that you've ignored my previous emails, I'm notifying you that your BAS will not be lodged on time and you may incur fines. So, and that worked. It's another pain thing, but what really annoyed me was when these people who you've got all your schedules and I've got my team in place and they're there ready to do things on a certain day. And then the client finally gets the stuff to you at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon and says, right, can you get this to me by Monday? And you go, no, just no. That's not okay. But if you set the expectation and you say, if you don't, and then you say, well, I've already sent you the email to say that it won't be lodged on time. So it will be scheduled in at our next available time with my next available bookkeeper next week, but it will not be lodged on time. And I already warned you about that. I mean, it really bothered me because before I realized that I cared more about my client's business than they did, I would then go, okay, I'll work all through the weekend then to get it done. No. And what's that other saying about don't allow your client's priority to become your urgency or something? There's a have you heard that one?
I haven't heard that one.
I'll have to look it up. I'll see if I can find it. Don't allow your, so suddenly what I'm saying is suddenly it's urgent for the client. And so it needs to be your priority.
Sorry, what was that, Parissa?
Sorry.
It's don't let the client's lack of organization become your urgency
Right.
or emergency
Yeah.
or something like that.
Something, words to that effect.
Yeah.
It's their lack of organization, not yours. Therefore, it shouldn't be your emergency.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. So
Yeah.
you don't work until midnight or work all weekend because finally they realized, oh, the deadline is Monday and I'd better get this done now, because now they've prioritized it, but now it's their priority has become your emergency, and it's not.
Yeah, good point. Parissa, you were off mute before. Did you want to have a chat about what's going on in your world at the moment?
It's not so much that it's Bassan. It's I haven't had my Bassan last month because I picked up a new client that I didn't have a clue what I was doing. They are in palliative care, so I had to learn a whole new software. And then I went in and I realized the previous bookkeeper had messed everything up. So now on top of me learning and trying to figure out if what I'm doing is correct to start with, I was picking up all these things on payroll and here and there. I was like, why are you incurring leave every 20 hours? This is the part, like this girl had locked up so much leave being a part-timer, more than the full-timer stuff that were working there. And she was taking like every second day off. And the owner's like, how is she taking all this time off? Like no one else has this many hours to take leave off. How is she doing this? I'm like, that's because the setup was gone. So, but that's the thing. It's taken me so long to actually learn what I'm supposed to be doing that I haven't touched anyone else's best. And the one girl who was helping me with these things went and got herself a full-time job. So I've lost her. So everything is now back on me again. And now I'm getting all these evil looks on my kids and my husband going, this is not how you were supposed to, this wasn't the deal. You weren't supposed to do this to yourself. And I don't know what to say to them because I know that wasn't the deal. The deal wasn't that I will become another workaholic. I had a job to become a workaholic if I wanted to do that.
And I think
So
one of the, sorry,
Go on,
Katrina, one of the things that you need to be mindful of, and this goes for everyone, when you are taking on a new client, you've got to think about the timing. So a new client doesn't suddenly, you then push away all your other clients and then do that client, because otherwise that's going to come back to bite you anyway, because you'll either be working nights and weekends to get your other client work done, as well as get this rescue job done. So just be mindful of that.
I think that was the unfortunate bit for me. When I picked this up, the lady who was helping me out bailed out on me, and now I'm like, I don't have time to train someone new. She is trying to help me. God bless her. She is trying to help me, but she also has a full-time job. I can't expect her to do the same hours that she was before, and she was a casual, so it's not like I can force her to do more hours than she wants to do. So I'm just trying. So now it's like, now my Bassan will actually come on, because now I'm like, okay, I've gotten that client to a point where it's semi-manageable. I need to, like, the only thing I did for all my other clients was just finalize the STPs, make sure all the payroll taxes were done, like, you know, all the emergency stuff. And everything else that was non-emergency was put on the back burner. And now I'm like, now they need to come back on, because now they are going to become an emergency if I don't deal with them.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
building a business, building a resilience isn't something that you learn straight away. So you are learning some of these experiences from what you are experiencing. So and learning the lessons from what you are experiencing. So hopefully you will take that away as what Deb said, don't put on new clients during a busy BAS period. So if you are approached by a new client in the future during a BAS period, what do you think your response will be?
I want to say I'll reject them, but this is my juiciest client that I've ever had so far. I really couldn't resist it.
I don't think you have to reject. I don't think you have to reject them. I think you have to set their expectations. So if you're taking on a client right, like in the middle of July, and you've done your initial health check and you can understand that the client is a mess, then you just need to set the expectation with the client that it's going to take a few months for that to get rectified. Then you advise the ATO that you've taken over the new client and advise them that you're going to need an extension on their BAS because you're going to have to go back and review and check. And then nobody's expectations are disappointed because your client knows that you've still got your other clients that you're working on and you're getting that all sorted. And then you've also let the ATO know that basically you've picked up this file and you're trying to fix it. So they understand as well that it's going to take a while for the BASs to get put in place and for the lodgements to occur. So long as you set your expectations with all of your clients, you can accept new clients at busy times.
I think my problem with this new client is not the client itself, but it's her business coach. Like how, like it's getting to a point where I did contemplate actually disengaging her because I started to feel like he's treating me like an employee.
Then you need to just have that discussion.
And I'm just like, so now I'm trying to figure out, okay, I've done this. Do I actually want to keep going with this? And will this become a nightmare that I will never wake up from, no matter how juicy she is, you know? Or will I be able to manage the business coach as well as the client? Because I don't know. Like the deadline is like, it's just, I don't know if it's got to do with me not knowing initially what I was doing and I had to learn the software and all that, or it's because they were expecting too much. Like I'm still trying to figure that bit out, whether things got into this place because I fell behind or because they were being unreasonable. And I really can't decide on that yet because I'm not at the point where I'm 100% confident with the software itself to see if I'm taking unnecessary time, like if it's taking me too long unnecessarily because I'm new to it, or it's taking time because it actually needs that much time.
And I think it's probably a combination of that. And I think the learning around this, if I can give you just a bit of coaching, and Katrina kind of touched on this as well, is really spending time, which this isn't what the conversation is around today. So we'll just skip over this part and get back onto the BAS on pain. But I can't help but think it's all about working out, well, who is your ideal client? You really need to be thinking about that right now, like before you actually take on this next client. In an example of that was for me, I didn't take on any new clients that had any software that I didn't know. So because it's not repeatable, I couldn't train. If I had to learn a software, it was dependent on me to start off with, which was number one, that's not a good idea. And number two was, well, for me to hand over to another bookkeeper, I'd have to spend weeks or months training that person in a software that only one client uses. So you think carefully about what clients you're going to say yes to. I agree with Michelle. You don't have to turn them away, but you need to set the expectation. And even before that, as you said, Michelle, you've done the scope of work. Decide at that point whether, before you even set expectations, it's really right at the beginning of deciding whether that's an ideal client for you. And is this a client that you can grow with and that will grow with your business? So thinking about that, and that's probably a webinar or a session power hour for another day. But that's definitely something for you to be thinking about. And it's a common thing for everyone that says, you know, we say yes to everyone with a pulse and a checkbook, as they say. And it's that what that can do is create a rod for your back, which it's done now. And now you're trying to work out all the scenarios and what went wrong and how did that happen. But right from the start, if after this whole thing is over, the best thing you can do for yourself, Parisa, and for anyone else that hasn't spent any time doing this, is work out who is your ideal client. And that means what software they're using. Do they have payroll? Do you love inventory? Where are they located? What industry they're in? You know, and that takes a lot of thinking. When you are starting out, as I say, we tend to say yes to everyone, but it's worthwhile because it just creates a pain point, really.
I am learning to say no. I did disengage the client that made me cry last month.
Good.
Yes.
Good for you.
Good.
So I am. I'm not crying anymore. I'm not at that point anymore. I'm just at the frustrated point right now. But yeah, now my back's on. But I just wanted to say that checklist that Pure Bookkeeping has, that's what I was actually trying to say. I don't know why I went on tangent. My bass is on, but the checklist makes it far easier because I can pick up where I left and not get lost in my own thoughts and stuff.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say. Not all the other gambles that you had to look into. I'm so sorry.
No, but it's a good learning, and it's a good, you know, for others as well to learn from these experiences. Or, you know, just trigger a memory or trigger, you know, well, you know, should I be taking this client on when I haven't even started my BASs? So it's just, you know, setting expectations, that communications, and a lot of bookkeepers report that they say, I'm full up at the moment and I'll look at you in August, or, you know, we'll have a meeting in August or September when we're off BAS. So just another way of delaying. Like, you don't have to say no to them all of the time. It's just pushing them off until you can actually handle them. Michelle, did you put your hand up? Yep.
Yeah. So for the first time ever this month, we've actually had to tell any new clients that the turnaround for even just looking at their accounts is going to be a minimum of a week before we'll send them a quote, before we'll look at their proposal or anything, because we're overloaded with new clients coming in, and they don't turn around and they go, oh, don't worry about it, then I'll go find someone else. They go, oh, okay, no worries, well, I'll hear from you in a week, kind of thing. So don't feel afraid to turn around and say, I'm not gonna get to you till next week or whatever, especially at end of year as well. Everybody knows everyone's doing group certificates and end of year BAS and all that sort of stuff. So the expectation's already there. If you're walking in the door in July, August, expect a delay with a bookkeeper. So don't be afraid to say it.
How does that make you feel when you've taken back control?
Really empowered, actually, very empowered. When I walked into the office, we were struggling. Laura and I were struggling. I mean, and we've got 2 business partners and 8 staff, and 2 of those also handle new clients. And we're sitting there going, there's too much. We can't even look at BASs at the moment because there's too much work coming in. And so I just walked into the office one day and I went, that's it. Please tell any new clients that ring, there's a minimum 1 week before we're even going to look at their file. So don't expect anything back. And as I said, they were all just like, oh, okay, yeah, no worries, that's fine. You know, there's tradies do the same thing to you, so why shouldn't you do it to them? You know, like, yeah, I'll come and fix your bathroom, but it's going to be like 6 weeks before I get there. So I think it's perfectly fair play turnaround kind of thing to turn around and say, look, it's going to be a week before I'm going to look at that file, or turn around to a new client and say, look, that's great, I'm just in the middle of my BASs. I expect them to all be done by the 25th, so I'm going to start looking at your file then. We'll put an extension in with the ATO or whatever you need to do. So just own it.
Yeah, perfect. And it's awesome that you do own it, that you are, you know, taking back that control, that you get to choose when and who and how.
Exactly. And I think as bookkeepers, it's kind of our personality that we want to please, and we want to be right, and we want to do all the right things and do it all like really, really quickly and all that sort of stuff. It's part of our personality. So you just got to realize that it's okay, as long as you set the expectation. everything will be okay. That's
Yeah,
how I found it.
exactly. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
I'm almost scared to ask, but how many years did it take you to get to that point? Or how many times did you experience the pain of putting new clients on at the wrong time, or, you know, not sharing that expectation with them?
Yeah, so that's what I've always found. Whenever we have a complaint, it's not that we haven't done the work or the work's been terrible or anything like that. It's been that they thought it was going to happen a lot quicker, or there was an expectation that we were going to put them first, and things like that. So I think it's probably about, as I said, this is the first time we've ever told new clients they're going to have to wait. And we've been operating BizWise since 2010. So I guess you might say it's been, 10 years for me to work that one out?
Yeah. So
Maybe.
I guess the point of this conversation and learning is for those that are coming up the ranks, that have been in business for a couple of years or 5 years or whatever, to learn the lesson quicker.
Yeah, well, if you can. It's still hard because if you're new in business, you want to please everybody, because you want everyone to love what you do and who you are and all that sort of stuff. So
But
it's always very, very hard.
Yeah.
But
you're learning that it doesn't always work if you're just, you know, wanting to please everybody and wanting to take everything on. It doesn't always work out for the best outcome.
No.
So,
and I think in the same token, you've also got to understand that the business owners have to take ownership for what they do as well. So they can't expect you to run their entire business for them. That, you know, they've got to be there and participate and be part of it and all that sort of stuff. And those clients you're happy to bend over backwards for. And then for other ones, if they're not interested, you're not interested. You just got to accept it.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Michelle. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else that would love to come off mute that might be struggling at this time with their BAS, or, you know, how to stay afloat? I mean, we'll probably touch on some health issues as well. But before that, is there anybody?
Maurice, did you put a comment in the chat box? Are you able to speak? Do you want to?
Oh, yeah, happy to talk.
Yeah.
Sorry, just multitasking. That's why I'm not, don't have my video going. Yeah, so I'd taken on quite a few new clients towards the end of the financial year, which was, in hindsight, a little bit optimistic. And we've been renovating the house for 1.5 years, and it finally all came to a head in the first week of July, and then my partner went in for surgery, and so we were trying to move house and finish renovations and move, and so BAS has kind of taken a back seat. Finally back on board full time and working hard, very hard.
Yeah. Is there a particular thing you want that we might be able to help you with, or that hasn't been covered already in terms
No, there've been a lot of good ideas, actually. So as I've been listening, I've been taking notes about, you know, what might actually make it easier once I can pay attention to it for a moment.
One thing that I do recommend everyone do is spend a little bit of time, like not long, 10-15 minutes at the end, or either at the end of the day or at the very first thing you do in the morning, is to keep a little diary of how you're feeling, what happened yesterday or what happened today, you know, depending on when you're doing it, what went wrong, in particular, what went wrong or what you could do better, and what you're going to put into place. It's all going to be around systems. So it'll be around, it's either how you do the BAS or how you're training staff, or maybe you need to recruit. So think about what is the possible solution. You might not have the time. You probably don't have the time to really do anything about it now. There might be a couple of little tweaks you'll be able to make, but it's kind of just gutsing through this end of year time as best you can. But don't forget it. Write down what each day, what didn't work, and what you need to implement after the BAS, when it's BAS off, so that next year is going to be different. Now, there's certain things out of our control, having operations, moving house, and blah blah blah, and all these sort of things. But in the scheme of how it's all happening, so Alison, what are you going to put into place to get that paperwork from those clients, or do you need to sack those clients, or you'll get text expander, get up these emails going? But there's a number of strategies just to deal with that one issue of how do I get work from my clients. And this is not just for, this end of year BAS. This is like for all the time, right throughout the year. How do I get the paperwork or the whatever it is from these clients? So write down, and then you'll have an action list from this. Just park it for the time being until you get through this. And then you prioritize your list. Okay, what is going to give me the biggest bang for my buck? And so that I can, if I do this one thing, it's going to solve a huge problem, which is going to give me the best relief from this one particular thing. And then that's what you implement first. So the part of this conversation is not just to talk about the pain points around BAS and things like that and deadlines. It's actually what the solutions are and what are you going to do and when are you going to do that to make it better. It's always got to be that there has to be actions that you're going to take that you will prioritize after when it's BAS off.
Yeah, that's great. Great feedback and suggestion. Because you will just roll into the next BAS doing the same things, same mistakes, same headaches, and it just goes on and on. So, and in relation to Maurice, where you've got health issues or things going on, moving house and surgeries and things like that, these things will often come up. It's going to happen, and we've just got to be able to plan for it. So, whether you have a backup plan, or whether you have like an emergency, ideas where it could be that you do just contact the tax office and say, I need an extension of all of my client list. Or, reach out to colleagues, and a lot of bookkeepers share work. Just reach out to somebody to assist with, some of the stuff. Prioritize exactly what needs to be done in the most urgent. Whatever's the most urgent thing that needs to be done, prioritize that stuff. I used to, relate it back to, having children. You'd go into emergency or emergency mode, survival mode. You would feed and bathe and sleep the child, the baby, and that's all you would do. So what is it for you that will get you through the next days and weeks in survival mode? It doesn't need to be pretty. It doesn't need to be, doing the end of year processes. It doesn't need to be reaching out and doing marketing or networking. It doesn't need to be a lot of things. Just what are the bare basics when you're in survival mode, and it happened to me quite a lot, until you get to a point where I need to put staff on. This is not working for me. But it does happen, and you get thrown into that, what do I now need to do? What's the system that I now need to do to avoid, experiencing this again, or having that backup plan? So, just thinking about those things of how you can continually improve your business to make it a bigger, stronger, better business for the future.
I'm reading or listening to an audio book. It's also in paperback and that as well, called The Checklist Manifesto, which is
Did you write it?
Did I write it? I could have probably, but this is actually written by a surgeon. I'm just looking. It was actually written for by a surgeon. And I think now it's actually a worldwide process for how you deal with, you talk about emergencies and stuff like that. Atul Gawande is the author, the Checklist Manifesto. I'm not suggesting necessarily that you go out and all run out and get that book, because it is very heavily focused on operating theatres, and he goes into a lot of gory detail about what happens in operations and also what can go wrong. So, but the point that he made in this that I think is worthwhile mentioning now is a checklist, and Parisa mentioned the PB checklists and awesome and things like that. The reason, what you want to do is have, when you're writing your checklist, if you obviously, if there's people on the call that are not licensees and they don't have the system, but when you're creating your checklist, it needs to be for when those things, like you know how to do a BAS, like everyone knows how to do a BAS, and they go through the process of a BAS. But then, as Maurice said, something happens, and Katrina said something comes from left of field which knocks you off your feet. And if you've got a checklist where you can go, I can't really, I can't think clearly about this process, but if I've just got a checklist, I'm pretty sure I can just follow this checklist because I know how to do it. But you're so deeply, knocked over by life and that particular event that happened at that time. You grab your checklist and go, I can't think about anything else. I'll just go into automatic mode. But the problem is, if you try to dig down, if you don't actually have a checklist and you're trying to dig down into, you go, what do I do now? I can't think, what do I do next? But if you've got a checklist and you go, oh, that's right, that's the next thing. That's the next thing. And that's what this, I guess, the essence of what this fellow's saying is, like when people are in surgery, the nurses, and they're all very highly trained, but then shit happens, something terrible happens and they go, what do we do now? And we've got to work, but then they've got this checklist that they follow. When this happens, do this. And so they all just go to the checklist and they go, right, this has happened. And aircraft, he interviewed pilots and all the checklists that they have. Pilots are highly trained. You don't need to tell them how to start an engine and get off the ground. They've got checklists for all the stuff that goes wrong. And so they don't have to think, hang on, what do I do when an engine blows out? I've got to do this. So that would be my advice for anyone that, obviously, if you're pure bookkeeping, use the checklists. And then if you haven't got those, create your own. As Katrina said, she worked and worked and worked on creating her own checklist so that it got this out of your head, so that when stuff does come on board, which it does because life happens and we're not just business owners, we're mums and daughters and dads and husbands and all this sort of thing as well, then you've got your checklist that you can fall back on.
Yeah, exactly. Robin.
Yes, Robin.
Joining us.
Hi. I was just going to agree with what you said, Debbie. I think that it's really easy to, as a solo business owner, to sort of go, no, but I know what I need to do and I'm not preparing for staff, so why would I bother writing all of these things down? And I think it's like, it's just being kind to your future self to detail, put all those things in place, have a workflow management software in place. It's going to tell you what to do, when to do it, have checklists so that when your mind is elsewhere, when things go wrong, you can just work through it. And of course, the added benefit is if you suddenly do decide that you want to add staff, you've got everything there already. But I do think even if you're working by yourself, it's just so important to be kind to your future self and document all those things.
I love that. Be kind to your future self. There's things that we don't know, do we? We don't have a crystal ball and we think, oh, well, this is where I am now and this is the way it's going to be. And I had no intention of when I started out of putting on staff. I didn't even know that was a thing, and it wasn't even on my radar. Now we talk about it all the time, but when I was growing my business, it was like, no, I've got my clients and I've basically bought myself a job and that was good. I was working for myself, charging what I wanted and all those sorts of things, but I didn't have any systems in place. And the other thing about this is that if you think that you're on your own and that's the way it's going to be, you won't prepare your clients for your future self. So you won't have conversations with them about, I never did. I didn't say, oh, by the way, in 12 or 18 months time or a couple of years, I'm probably going to be putting on another bookkeeper. I didn't set that expectation as, as Michelle said earlier, setting the expectation. So then it took me 12 months to extricate myself out of my clients when my future self was now my present self. And I went, oh, I can recruit, I can grow, I can expand beyond what I thought was even possible. Okay, let's do that then. And then, but then I had to go back and have all those conversations with clients who weren't expecting me to replace myself. Good suggestion, Robin. Be kind to your future self.
Yeah, I love it. And even when you get late into the BAS, or you've just had some big days and you're just exhausted, it's just nice to have that checklist just to follow. So you don't have to think too much about what do you have to do next. You can do the activities, but you just want to make sure that you've got everything covered. So it's just like tick everything off. And like, I know how to do a back rec, tick. Now what do I need to do? Oh, now I need to do a credit card check, tick. Yeah. So it just helps you along the way, especially when you get into something like BAS and reconciling BAS. You want to make sure that you've covered everything off, and it proves later on that you've done it as well. So often I would not tick things off. I would just go ahead and do a client's work, and then as somebody in the call today picked up work later and gone, I can't remember if I've done that or not. I've got no working papers, no checklist, so now I've got to go do it again. So that would happen a lot too. So it's all okay. It's like business building. It's evolving your business into a stronger business by having these experiences and rolling into what does the business need, what system does that need, and the point of these calls are to help others do it faster than perhaps Deb and I did it. We probably had a lot of pain for a long period of time before we actually created all this stuff or followed it through.
Yeah, and I think that another in terms of systems, we spoke about it right at the start, Alison, with workflow management processes. I think they will be are a lifesaver as well. I didn't have a workflow management. I paid a 2IC. My operations manager was my workflow management programmer. And I had an Excel spreadsheet, which was the BAS schedule, which is actually still part of the pure bookkeeping system for those people that don't have a workflow management program. So, but one of the things, whatever you're using, you've got to get that stuff of what is that up to? Has the client given me that? What is the next thing? Dates, reminders, pop-ups, all these fabulous things that you get with a workflow management program that stops at 3 a.m. Did I get that stuff from that client? Did I lodge his BAS? It's like that does your head in. So get that workflow management program happening. And if you need something really fast, do it in Excel. List down your clients. Have dates about when you're going to do the work, and have you received their paperwork, or have all your different columns. In fact, it's actually a really good way, if you don't know which workflow management program to use, you're starting with an Excel spreadsheet is a really good way of getting your workflow out of your head and how you operate and what is logical to you. And we know with workflow management programs that they're different ones, different people love this and love that and don't like that, and all that. It's not logical, it's not intuitive, it's all these different things you hear people say. If you don't have anything and you start off with an Excel spreadsheet and you put what do I want to know and when do I want to know that this has happened, the client work has been received, the bank recs have been done, this, that's actually part of your workflow management. So when you are actually trialing some workflow management programs, you will already have an idea of what you want it to do for you, because they all behave slightly differently. So it's it's a really worthwhile exercise to use that BAS schedule that we've got in the system, or create your own, just to get out of your head where you're at with each of your clients. You're muted, Katrina.
Yep.
Very good.
I've popped into the chat a link to the Facebook where this is live streaming. I'd love everybody to jump over there. Robin, you could test it out that it actually works. Jump over there and pop in a comment on that live stream so we can share with everybody what your takeaway is of today, or a suggestion for other bookkeepers that are listening to this. I'd love for some comments to jump in over on our Successful Bookkeeper Australia. Does that open, Robin?
What would be your number one tip? The one thing that you learned that has transformed your BAS on experience and surviving BAS on, what would that number one thing be that you'd share with our community here at the Successful Bookkeeper Australia?
Only one, Deb?
No, feel free. Look,
Feel free to go to town.
Bombard them.
How long have you got?
Yeah, and speaking of that, Michelle, maybe you can say what would be your, is there one? Yeah, as you say, it's hard to pick one thing. But
Hard to
what
pick
would
one.
be, yeah.
I think so. We're quite big, so biggish. So we've got quite a few staff. So delegation and trust in your systems was a big one for us. So it took a while for Laura and I to let go and trust that we had our systems in place. So we followed pure bookkeeping from the start pretty much. So our processes are very much aligned to the PBK stuff. We've tweaked them a bit, so we try not to use the Excel spreadsheet so much, but we've moved those into Asana. So we've still got those same processes, just in a different format. And I think our biggest thing, we just had to trust that our systems were right and that they would work. Take a moment to review what you've done and revel in the off BAS period, and just take a moment to go, there you go, we did it, we got through, everyone was lodged. Maybe there was 2 or 3 who didn't, but for most of those, that was their own fault. Because they hadn't provided documents or hadn't signed off or whatever the reason. And then if there was any issues, just to have a look at them, and don't think that it's a person problem, because it won't be a person problem, it'll be a system problem. So if something doesn't work, it'll be because there was a system or something that didn't work. So have a look at what that system was and modify the system. Don't think that it's your personal fault or anything that you've done wrong or anything like that. So I think that was probably our biggest ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that one. And that was my mantra, really. When something went wrong or it was a terrible BAS, I'd say, okay, what system do I need to put in place in order for this to not happen again, or to be better than the last time? And that would be my number one tip, which I'll just reiterate, is just spend a little bit of time, 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the day, to say, what was a big pain point today and what system do I need to put in place to avoid that from happening again.
And I think the surprising thing is the system that probably fails the most was our new client checklist. That was the one that we developed to make sure that the person got put on a BAS, that the BSP authorization got sent out, that there was a bookkeeper assigned to them. So whenever we had a fallover, it was usually because when we initially took the client on, we hadn't done all the steps we needed to make sure they were in the process at BAS time. So it's not just your BAS process, it's all your processes from as soon as you start and get that new client So understanding your timeframes to get things done, what authorizations you need, like providing information, documenting all your process for that client, stuff like that. That was where we realized most of our, when we didn't do something, it actually stemmed from right at the beginning, before,
And
way before BAS.
we now have an onboarding checklist. I've just put the link.
Yeah,
This is obviously
yeah,
good
there's,
for
it's a new one that you developed the other week, wasn't it? Or well,
Yeah.
finalized the other week. Yeah,
that's right,
yeah.
recently. So
yeah.
no, I agree.
So
with
yeah,
you.
we've got it. We had already sort of done that in XPM, created a new client checklist for ourselves, based on our systems. So part of that was making sure our XPM checklist was put in place, that the right people were assigned, that the PSP had been authorized, that the STP had been authorized, and all those sort of things. So that as soon as, when BAS came around, it was on our list that it was a BAS we had to do, so it didn't get missed, things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's a classic example of when you've got the time, create the system. If you're repeating something over and over again and it's not working, put it on your action list when you've got the time and create that system so it doesn't continue happening. So it's, just what we're trying to promote here is, building that stronger business is building out your systems.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks.
I don't think you need to do it all in one hit either. Like if you're just starting out and you come to BAS time, if you set a recurring task for each of your clients for the BAS, so that next time you're going to be flagged and you're not going to miss doing someone's BAS, then that's a great start. And then, when you do onboard someone, then add in a checklist for onboarding, and then you get to super. Add in some, tasks for super. Like you don't need to go, you don't need to go flat out and don't try and get everything perfect to start with. Because it will grow. And it's really nice, like once you've got everything sorted out, to have a client template that you can just duplicate and it does everything for you. But it's also a bit like what you were saying, Debbie, about having the Excel spreadsheet and going through that process. I think part of setting up your workflow software is going through the process of identifying what you do need to do and what you do need to know, and when you want to be alerted about different things. And just don't try and get it perfect before you start relying on it. Start really slowly. Yeah.
Great tip.
Yeah, really good tip. All right, so we are at the top of the hour, so we will finalise. So if you haven't jumped over to the Successful Bookkeeper Australia group, jump over there and put down your tips over there. We've got some great tips over there. So thank you for those. And yeah, look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you so much, everybody, for jumping in. Thanks, Deb, for your wonderful coaching as usual. And thanks for those that are watching this recording after the event. Also put in your comments what your number one tip is as a result of watching this. We'd appreciate seeing some feedback. Wonderful. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. See you around the community. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.